Mr. Andre Henry is in the building. Thank you so much for coming to the Paging Dr. Chanda podcast. How are you today?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. It's definitely a pleasure. I can't wait to get into our discussion. But first things first, if you can kind of tell the people who you are, what you do, and yeah, all the
Sure.
magic that makes you you.
Sure. So I'm Andre Henry. I'm an author and a musician and an activist around racial justice and mental health.
I love it. I love it. And you do some podcasting too, right?
Oh yeah, I have a podcast called Hope and Hard Pills, where we talk about for many years we've been talking about practical insight for social change, like how do ordinary people actually take action, because there's so much information out there that people don't know. The
Yeah.
last season, my friend Trish joined as my co-host. We were really doing pop culture, and we just closed that season. And next season, we're going to be focusing on resilience and mental wellness and all of that kind of stuff. So I look forward to talking to you on my podcast about that.
Yes. I can't wait to be on. I know it's definitely been a long time coming. You were actually supposed to be on my pod months ago. So I do
Yeah.
appreciate your flexibility.
Oh no, I've been looking forward to actually just conversing with you. So I'm glad that we just
Yeah,
made it happen.
absolutely. Absolutely. So tell us a bit about your mental health advocacy work and how you got into that.
Yeah, okay. So I want to be concise about this because I can really talk.
You don't have
So
to.
um but around 2016, when I watched Philando Castile die in front of his girlfriend and their 4-year-old daughter in Minneapolis, I started that was like a point that was like a crossing a threshold for me as far as, racial consciousness, the Black Lives Matter movement, all of that. And I felt like I need to, among several things, I need to learn more about systemic racism. First off, I understand racism on a personal level, being Black in America. But when I kept hearing people say systemic, 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 and I didn't really understand what that means. So I was like, I need to educate myself. I need to learn everything I can about social movements, because I know that, in the past, that has been the thing that has moved the needle. And thirdly, I need to find a way to invest my body into the struggle.
Mhm.
Now, I've been making music my whole life. I started writing songs when I was like 8 years old or something like that. So the thing that was immediately available to me was, I was doing shows in LA. Um, I was in seminary at the time, you know, and so these are two areas that I can just use what I have. I can at least tell my story. And a few weeks later, there's a whole story there, but a few weeks later, I had a vision, really. I had a vision of myself with a white boulder, and on this boulder was written like all of the injustices that we experience in America as Black people, including the names of, folks that we'd seen, die in ways like this, from Trayvon up to Philando Castile at the time.
Yeah.
And when I came out of that vision, I felt like I was supposed to do it. So I did, the next day. So actually I remember talking to people about it, and I'm like, I feel like I need to do this thing. And I remember someone saying to me, well, you have to do it right now. And what I told them was, if God asked me to do something, God knows how I am. That means that God wants it done right away. Or else God wouldn't have come to me.
Right.
So,
That's how
so
it works.
right. So like, because that's how I am. If I
Yeah.
know what I need to do, I'm gonna do it. So the next day, I'm I'm like I have this 100-pound white boulder that I painted white, and I wrote all the things I saw in the vision on, and I'm trying to get it through
Wow.
the classroom door of I was in beginning Greek at the time. I'm trying to get it through the classroom door of beginning Greek, and I walk it through the door, and my professor, of course, is looking at me like, the hell is going on in here? And he said, Andre, do you want to tell us, you know, why you're dragging a boulder behind you today. And I told them, this boulder represents the weight that systemic racism lays on the Black psyche.
Mm.
And that was like the beginning
Wow.
of my journey. That was the beginning of me shifting my music to be more justice oriented, the beginning of my journey as an activist, and the beginning of me connecting the dots between, social oppression and mental health. Because what I was feeling was disempowered, rage, depression, all these things because of that constant, this constant rhythm of encountering these spectacles of Black death, right? Well, was that 7 years ago? No, 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 no. That was in 2016. Anyway, I can't do the math right now, but
That's about 7 or 8.
yeah, that's 7 years. Yeah, 7 years
Yeah.
ago. Dang, wow.
Time flies, right?
So over that time, I got deeply involved into, studying nonviolent movements. How do they work? What makes them work? What makes them effective? I traveled the world looking for answers, and to the point where now I have mentors who have toppled dictators in other countries and all that kind of stuff. But what I hadn't accounted for, what I didn't expect, getting into social activism, is that there's a lot of change that has to happen in us who are trying to create change, right? So
Mhm.
we have people who are traumatized by mainstream culture, and then all these traumatized people get together who don't understand how to heal from that trauma, how to deal with that trauma, and so everyone's lashing out at one another. So I
Mhm.
got deeply hurt, in the social activism space too, because of that. And then that brought me back to the need to understand resilience. How do we build resilience? How do we cultivate it within ourselves? What is it made of? And what really works? You know what I mean? Like, because a lot of people have opinions, on how to be well, under these conditions. But a lot of us, a lot of it is wisdom that's been passed down to us, right?
Mhm.
And some of it is effective and some of it works, and some of it is kind of like treating the acute
Yeah.
symptoms, but not really getting to the source or to the root. And that's really the journey that I'm on now, is building my own resistance and resilience, sorry, building my own
Mhm.
resilience, looking into the resilience of other freedom fighters throughout history, and writing songs from that place. That's where my last EP that just came out a few weeks ago, Make It to Tomorrow, comes from, is me doing like a lot of like soul work, spiritual care, and just being honest about that same thing, that same dynamic
Yeah,
of living under these conditions can really take a toll on you
for
spiritually.
sure.
So here I am.
Yeah, and I love how you're bringing up like the various domains that racial
Hmm.
stress and trauma can impact us as Black people,
Hmm.
because oftentimes we might talk about like, yeah, the emotional piece. I'm sad and I'm
Yeah.
weighed down, but even thinking about how you said spiritually, like spiritually it can weigh you
Hmm.
down. It can weigh us down
Absolutely.
physically.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I
Absolutely.
love how you took your experience with that. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I know that you know more about that than I do, right? See, this is something I'm still learning, but how this is what I've been thinking about a lot lately this week, is a lot of people, we love to repeat whoever said it first. You are a spirit and you have a body, right?
Hmm.
And lately this week I've been thinking, no, you are a body. you know, we can get into the semantics of it or whatever, but you are a body. And I
Hmm.
think that's not to say you don't have a spirit, you don't have a soul, but it's because I think that we have underplayed the role that everything we go through has on our physical body, the chemicals
Yeah.
that are released in our body, where we're storing emotions and trauma in our bodies, how sickness is related to stress, how, all these kinds of things. Because, quite frankly, as I do the work to build my own resilience and cultivate, self-compassion and all these other resources, I'm feeling the effects of that process in my
Mhm.
body. Feeling I have not really been able to walk really good this week because I have so much pain in my hips and in my lower back. And I started
Mhm.
reading about it, and I went to the chiropractor. And the first thing she said, now she went through all these things. I didn't have anything traumatic happen physically. The first thing she said is, this can be the result of emotional trauma. And she keeps listening. But the first thing she said was emotional trauma. And I
Wow.
went, man, this is so crazy because that's exactly
Yeah.
what I was looking up, you know. So yeah, I mean, that's partly why I was excited to talk to you about this, because I know that you
Yeah.
know more about like how these things really affect our bodies, because this is something that I'm learning and something that I want for more of us, especially I want more black people to understand, because
Mhm.
I think that, especially like I'm Jamaicans and my family's Jamaican. So like I was talking to my dad the other day and he goes, you can't know that you're depressed in Jamaica. That's not something you can know. You're oppressed. You can know that you're depressed in America. You can't know that you're depressed in Jamaica, you know? And I think that that is one way that the cultures of those of us who have been marginalized and oppressed manifests itself, is that that's how we deal with this. We're gonna push through, but what's happening to our bodies in the while we're doing that?
Right. That's something we don't think about, right? We only think about like, oh, I'm distancing myself from what I'm feeling or what I'm emotionally
Hmm.
experiencing in that moment to make myself feel better. But we don't think
Yeah.
about like long term the impact that it has on us, because there is a brain body connection. There, like,
Yes.
whatever my body experiences in turn, whatever my emotions, whatever I experience emotionally in that regard, that can impact my body.
Yes.
And the same goes for trauma.
Yeah, exactly. Your body is going through it, right? Like
Yeah.
that's how you know you're experiencing it, because your body
Right.
is telling you, right?
Exactly. It's our body's way of talking to us.
Yes, yes, yes. So, that's where that's kind of where I enter this conversation and what I'm trying to
Yeah.
do with my music, because I'm not a mental health professional. I don't want to, put myself forward as that, but I do have an experience. I talked to my therapist about this, and she was like, "Yeah, Andre, you're not a mental health professional, but you are a trauma survivor, and you can talk about being a trauma survivor." And so that's what I'm trying to do in my music. Is first off, just give black people, especially, anyone who understands that experience that I'm talking about, where
Yeah.
your awareness of what's happening to you and in the world around you, all the kind of stuff, when that feels like that boulder that you're carrying, I want people to experience a sense of relief,
Hmm.
a sense of pleasure, right? When I learned about there was like that 2020 study from Auburn University that was talking about like how racial stress causes the cells in our body to age faster. It causes early death. It causes sickness, all this kind of stuff, that helped me to understand that, of all the revolutionary stuff that I've studied and tried to be involved in, that music in itself is a kind of medicine, that
For
can help
sure.
us really. It's like a direct intervention, right,
Yeah.
against the effects of racial stress on our bodies. And so that's one thing I'm just trying to do with the music, is give us something to just make us smile, make us feel good, make us feel understood, make us feel affirmed, make us feel empowered, you know, and also to kind
Yeah.
of challenge some of these narratives that keep us locked into these ways of being, like especially as, I live in a male body, but some of these discourses around masculinity and manhood
Hmm.
and all that kind of stuff are not
Hmm.
serving us well in this area
Hmm.
either. So yeah. What were you gonna say? I saw
No,
you.
no, no. I'm just taking a note because I want to get back to that. But I know you transition into your work being a musician. And so I'm wondering,
Hmm.
like, in your experience, how has being a musician and the music that you're putting out there, how has that been a catalyst for just like the revolution and even empowerment to other people?
Yeah, music has always played such a major role, like in resistance to oppression, right?
Yeah.
And I think it's partly because, you know, every uprising is rooted in the simple idea that I deserve better than this,
Mm-hmm.
right? There's a feeling, right?
Yeah.
Those feelings of rage or anger, those feelings of defiance, there's there. And I think that music has always been a way to express that. And then, like, for people like us who have been, our people have been colonized, one of the things that, our oppressors have tried to do is suppress cultural expression, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, they made drumming out illegal, in Jamaica. They made drumming illegal in the South, in America, when they're
Mm-hmm.
oppressing us. Because there's power in just us
Wait,
being
where
ourselves.
did they make that illegal?
They made it so the colonizers, wherever they were, wherever
Wow.
they set up colonies to oppress black people, they outlawed cultural expression, including
Yeah, yeah,
drumming
yeah.
and our dancing and all that kind of stuff, because what they needed for us to become our
Mm-hmm.
colonized subjects, right? you know so they didn't want us to have access to
Wow.
those things. So there's so much power in just us connecting to that, first off. And I could go throughout history, all the different artists who have
Yeah.
helped us, but one that comes to mind is, when Dr. King writes in his book,
Mm-hmm.
Why We Can't Wait, where he's talking about the Birmingham campaign during the civil rights movement. And he talked about the role of the freedom songs, you know uh because people are getting handcuffed and carted off to jail, and while they're getting carted off to jail, they're singing, you know ain't gonna let nobody turn me around. you know
Yeah.
because one thing that I think I underestimated, and I don't know how many people really think about this, but I underestimated it going into, because when I got into revolutionary work, I didn't believe in anything. The only thing I believed in you know was that our predecessors used nonviolent struggle to change something. So I believe in
Mm-hmm.
that, and that's what I believed in. And the years of really studying this, being involved in social activism, and learning from elders has brought my attention back to the fact that our oppressors want to crush our spirits, you know,
For sure.
not just our
Without a
bodies,
doubt.
not just our bodies. They don't just want to incarcerate us and impoverish us and disenfranchise us. They want to crush us from the inside out. In
Mm-hmm.
fact, I was just at Robben Island prison a few weeks ago in South Africa. And on the boat there, they were showing all of these videos of former political prisoners talking about their experience at Robben Island. And that's exactly what they kept saying. They kept saying, the empire sent us here to crush our spirits, and they failed, right?
Mm.
And so music plays a part in that,
Yeah.
right? I ask this question a lot because when you really look at what's happening and focus on the ways that this anti-Black world, you know, runs on Black death, on Black suffering, it can be discouraging, incredibly existentially discouraging, to where literally I wouldn't blame anyone to ask the question, well, why go
Mm.
on living, if we're going to keep, if every time I turn around, I'm seeing our people being denigrated on TV, they're rolling back whatever progressive legislation that we've won. They're cutting DEI programs that they just established in 2020 after George Floyd
Literally
was
just
killed.
established it.
Like, they
As soon
just
as it
got
was
there. You know what
established,
I'm
they
saying?
snatching them. Yes.
Yeah, like, when these things keep happening, those things have an effect on the spirit. And one thing that music has always, one thing that our predecessors and our ancestors have always been good at doing is deciding that they're going to live their lives to the fullest, regardless of the conditions that we're living under. Right. And
Mm.
so, like, underneath some of the worst anti-Black oppression in history, our predecessors still invented the samba and jazz and the Lindy Hop and still produced, all of this amazing literature and movies and stuff because, and they still fell in love and they got married and they had kids and
Yeah.
they built businesses on because they decided that regardless of the conditions that they're living under, that they're going to live the best life possible, right? And they're
Resilience.
and they're going to resist their oppression at the same time, right? And
Yeah.
music has always been a part of that. So there was a time in my involvement in the movement where I was more involved with strategy than creating art because I was asking this question, like, what's the most direct contribution I can make to the liberation of my people? And everything that I heard about music and art was more, I hate to say it, it sounded very woo-woo to me. It just sounded like people are
Okay.
just saying stuff they heard somewhere, but they don't. Like,
Yeah.
I'm very much the kind of person where it's like, give me the facts, you
Right.
know. Don't tell me that we're going to be nonviolent just because you think that's a good idea. That wasn't compelling to me. I became committed to nonviolence because I learned that the research shows that, you know, that nonviolent struggles were literally twice as successful throughout history than armed
Mhm.
struggles. That it only took 3.5% of the population in consistent nonviolent struggle against any oppressor to win a social transformation. Those were the things that were compelling to me.
That's
So
legit.
for that
The
reason,
stats.
like I
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
yeah, I wasn't like really okay. I'm like, music is important. We sing when we're on the streets, da 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 da. But I don't really understand. But then I started learning when I got burned out. When I got burned out as an activist, and I was like, excuse my language, but y'all niggas crazy out here. So I'm gonna go back to the studio because yeah, I'm gonna go back to the studio. And I got back in the
Yeah.
studio and I was reading about, because I was looking for answers for myself. I'm like,
Mhm.
I went into this because of a sense of depression, right? A sense of disempowerment. And I got into it and I saw that like a lot of us in these social movement spaces are nowhere near ready to confront the conditions that we're under because
Say that
we
again.
don't have the resilience skills within ourselves.
Mhm.
We are woke enough to know and to recognize white supremacy and anti-blackness around us, but
Mhm.
not necessarily conscious enough to understand the ways that we are continuing to enact those same structures and cultures and habits amongst ourselves, right?
Mhm.
And all these other things that I was seeing on the street, and I go, well, this is making it worse. Like I feel I feel more depressed now. So
Yeah.
I got back in the studio and I'm looking, I was looking for, all right, but how do I thrive, under this? And that's where I came across the data around what this is doing to us internally. And then seeing like that music is a natural antidote for the ways that this system is trying to crush us from the inside. But I also want to say one more thing about that. I believe we have known this, you know. We
Of
might not
course.
have been able to we may not have been able to write like psychological papers about it.
Yeah.
But we knew that it made us feel better. We knew that it lifted our spirits. We knew that it made us feel courageous. We knew, those kinds of things, you know. So yeah, I mean, it's always a big part. And the other thing is that there's so many artists that have been involved in our struggle for liberation in general too. Like I'm thinking of
For
like Paul
sure.
Robeson and Nina Simone and Bob
Nina.
Marley
Yeah.
and even
Yeah.
Mahalia Jackson, Aretha Franklin, all these all these musicians and artists and uh and folks have always been involved in this stuff. And so I feel very like honored to be a part of that tradition. We just lost one too, Harry Belafonte. He's also another
Hmm.
one. you
Yeah.
know he even tell you, he's singing daylight come at me want to go home, and all these white people are just like, what a fun song. But he explained it. He said, listen, this is a song of struggle. This is an anti-capitalist anthem. These men are saying we've been
Hmm.
working all night tallying these bananas and we're done. you know We don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
You know.
I feel like
So an essential
activism.
part.
Go ahead.
No. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I feel like I keep talking over you because my Wi-Fi is a little delayed today. So my deepest apologies.
No,
But
I'm
no,
also
I was
very talkative.
that I mean that's what podcasting is for, right? People tap in to hear us talk. So but you mentioned how like activism or music has always been a part of our activism. And
Hmm.
even thinking about like I thought that's literally embedded in like that's generational to us, like people
Yes.
on like plantations when our ancestors were
Hmm.
working, like literally sending message through music, literally encouraging
Absolutely.
one another through music. Like this is how
Absolutely.
it's been revolutionary since jump. Like that's music has been
Absolutely.
so embedded in our DNA from like since
Yeah.
day one.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's definitely a part of our, like you said, it's a part of our DNA. And I think
Yeah.
it's a natural way for us to express ourselves, right? And to communicate. And I think what I'm thinking of right now, I'm processing right now is I think that our oppressors would love it if we stopped singing, you know.
Oh, for
They would
sure.
love it if the music stopped, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And there's another side to that too, like where even in our social movements now, there are people talking a lot about how like we're not singing enough, right? Like we're not
Hmm.
producing enough songs that we can sing together on the street and all that kind of thing. Um and I just think like within, especially, with my focus, I'm just really interested in resilience right now, that yeah, we would just die. I think we would just die inside. I think we would become a
Yeah.
shells of who we are, without artistic expression. And so it's just so important for us to hold on to, you
Hmm.
know. It makes life beautiful, right?
For
And what
sure.
else are we here for but to enjoy life? Right? And I think that there are all these little ways that we can choose to thrive, right? Regardless
Mhm.
of the conditions that we're under. And I see music being a part of that. It makes us feel connected to other people. It makes us feel less lonely. We already talked about like what it does to the body. And when I think about that, I think about like all of it becomes like this healing work, even
Mhm.
for the people who may not be thinking about it that way. So it's like I think about like Meg the Stallion and Beyonce, and I mean Beyonce is like she's very like she's making like a very conscious pop, kind of catalog. But I think all these artists, basically what I'm saying is like even the artists who are just like making like something to twerk to are actually doing healing work for us.
Because music is cultural.
Yes, yeah, yeah, and it does that thing in your body, where like I'm just realizing more and more and more that this is a direct intervention against the ways that
Mhm.
living under these conditions attacks our bodies, on the inside, you know.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. No, I'm right there with you. I'm a firm believer in, basically everything that you said, especially the piece about music being that catalyst for change, and how
Hmm.
it's literally so embedded in our culture, to the
Yeah,
point where like even the twerk music, like you said, can be healing.
yeah,
Like,
yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And I used to write like, so when I first started writing songs about this kind of stuff, like I mean, I needed to express myself. So like I was literally like writing songs about police brutality and, like literally writing protest songs. And
I love that.
um, I noticed that like, even folks who worked on songs with me, like my friend Propaganda, we did this song called Red and Blue, and I wrote this song. It was about a time I got pulled over by the police, and they were just so sure, like I have drugs and weapons on me. This guy's definitely like trafficking, something. And me and Prop just neither one of us like listening to the song. It's good. It's a good song, but we don't we don't like listening to it because we already know, we know that that's going
Yeah.
on. We don't want to listen to that, when we're trying to wind down. And it made me think about, like, one of my heroes is Bob Marley, and I grew up listening to Bob Marley. My father was a reggae musician when I was young, and so, they raised me on that. That's our culture. But there's such a wide range of what they're singing about. And it just made me understand differently, like, why these musicians would write so many songs about relaxing, about
Hmm.
chilling out and, enjoying life and all that kind of stuff, because it's what we need, you know,
Yeah.
it just is what we
Yeah.
need. And so, when I think about kind of the mental health part of my journey, it's really in hindsight that I look back and I go, I started dragging this boulder around to tell people, like, this is what it feels like on my psyche, right?
Yeah. That's a good
And
metaphor.
I don't think I made that connection when I was doing it, that, like, I'm really talking about mental health at the time.
Hmm.
It's in hindsight that I look back at it and go, oh, like, this has always been about, like, mental health, right? For me. And so it feels like I'm coming back into that and leaning into that, especially understanding that one, this is a site of oppression, right? Our mental health, our spiritual health, our well-being is a site of oppression because of the nature of what we're enduring. And therefore it's a site of resistance, right? So everything that we do to make sure that we are well in this world, right, is a way that we are loving ourselves, which is our birthright, loving each other, which is also our birthright, but also, resisting that oppression that wants to turn us into really non-humans, right? That's what they want for us to be. Um, there was something else I wanted to say about that, but it's running away from me. But
No, you good.
yeah.
Yeah, no, I get exactly what you're saying. When thinking about like the music that you are creating and the change that you're
Hmm.
creating for other people through your music, um,
Yeah.
is the EP, is that called the Anthems of Revolut? Is that what it's called? I saw it on your
No,
page. I can't. Oh, okay.
it's called Make It to Tomorrow.
Make it to
And
tomorrow. Okay.
so, yeah, so what I tell people is that, like, I'm writing anthems of resilience.
I
So,
love it.
like, when I talk about, like, the movement for our liberation, it's like it's an ecosystem, right? And
Yeah.
everyone can't be the same animal, right? Because I used to think, like, listen, if you're not out on these streets with us, you're not serious, you know.
Come on.
But that's not everybody's role, and we also don't need everybody on the street, because, again, some of
That
these
ain't
niggas are
everybody's testimony.
crazy. Yes,
Right.
yeah, that's not everybody's ministry. We can't have a short story. Case in point, I remember one protest that I was that I was a part of. We did this huge caravan in Pasadena. We're blocking streets because they shot this man in the back in Pasadena, California, and so hundreds of cars, right? And I get down, I'm one of the leaders, so I'm walking down the street and I see one of the folks with us, like, harassing people who are eating, at some restaurant, like, he's all in their face and stuff like that. I'm like, yo, like, our beef is not with people who are just sitting here eating their dinner. Our beef is with the PD who shot this man in the back. He looked at me and said, nigga, if you don't get out my face. I
Oh,
was like, wow. Wow, that's what we're doing. You know what I mean?
yeah.
So we don't need everybody on the street. And so I realized that, because of what I know about
Yeah.
how multifaceted the attack is against us,
Hmm.
that my role is to write these anthems of resilience, right?
I
So
love
that
that.
we
I
can
love
feel
that.
strong,
Yeah.
and also to use what I have to give people the information that I have too,
Mhm.
because that feeling of disempowerment, that feeling that we are not powerful, that this is never going to change, that we can't really do anything about this, or that we have to become our oppressors in order to be free in one way or
Mhm.
another. These are all lies. And so that's what I'm trying to do with these anthems of resilience is, there's one song in there called Make It to Tomorrow. And, I have lived with depression and anxiety for a while. Um, I'm feeling so much better as I'm practicing more resilience, like
Nice.
intentionally, like as I'm saying that, just for anyone's listening, like it is possible to change your lived experience to a degree. But I wrote this song, "Make It to Tomorrow," when I was like really struggling with
Mhm.
suicidal ideation. I was just so deep in this depression, and so that's the name of the EP, and also that's the title track of the EP. And it's a great example of what I'm talking about when we talk about resilience, anthems, because this song starts right there. The first line
Mhm.
is, "Sometimes I feel suicidal." But by the end, like, it just doesn't feel that way, because it's all about, just making it to tomorrow. And I sing about
Yeah.
like the things that I knew at the time to take care of myself, like getting outside and getting some sun, getting some of that vitamin D from the sun,
Mhm.
talking to my friends, learning, my tools in therapy, like one of the self hug, I love the self hug, like just, you know, all that kind of stuff, because I wasn't equipped with that stuff growing up,
Yeah.
and I'm learning how important that is. So it's like putting words to these feelings, helping people to know that they're not alone. There's nothing wrong with feeling this way. You're not weak. I think that's one way that we're
Come on.
constantly
Yes.
gaslighted about this situation. It's like
Mhm.
somebody told us, somebody told us that we have to prove that we are strong by not having a rational and reasonable response to the fact that we live in a society that hates us, that literally treats us with hatred. You're not weak for being
Gaslighting
upset
to me.
about that. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're not weak for being upset about that. You're not weak for being mad about that. And you're not weak if it feels like, again, like you have this weight on you and
Mhm.
weighs you down. None of those things make you weak. It actually means that you're sane. It means that it actually is a healthy thing that you can recognize that. Okay, now we need to move through that. We need to allow those feelings to come and go. Um, and we also we need to learn, you know, how to cope, right? So I think with the EP, it's not instructional, because songs that are instructional aren't that fun, you know, but it is like, I see you, right? Like, I recognize you. So I
Yeah.
think that the experience of listening to it is like having a
Mhm.
friend, come into your house and just show you some compassion like you deserve.
I think just by listening to an EP like that, people would feel so validated and seen, based on the things that you're talking about and expressing. Where can people find the EP?
Oh, now there's anywhere, music is streaming: Spotify, YouTube, Apple Music, all those places. If they just look for "Make It to Tomorrow" by Andre Henry, it'll be there. I have a special version of it too on my website at andrehenry.co. So I have a song that didn't make it onto the official release. So I send that out, when people join my mailing list. And there's like an alternate version of the title track that I told y'all about. So
Cool. I can't wait to hear it. So a special treat to the listeners. You guys will actually be able to listen to Make It to Tomorrow as soon as we exit out of this interview. So I'm looking forward to it. I'm excited about this and you and your future.
thank you.
For sure, for sure. I'm a firm
Yeah, I'm
believer that
hoping.
yeah, go ahead.
No, what do you tell me?
No, I was gonna say I'm a firm believer that like as people, because we're so creative, like we can create different realms of activism and not even realize that it's activism. So
Yes.
I firmly
Yeah.
believe that this your music is a form of activism. I truly do.
Yeah. Yeah. And on to that point, I was reading this article the other day. It's called "My Gender is Marinage," but I can't remember the author's name.
Mm.
But they brought up one of the palenques that our predecessors built, and I don't know a whole lot about palenques, but I know one thing is that, some of us who escaped from enslavement set up our own societies alongside the slave society. Like, actually, my ancestors, the Maroons in Jamaica, literally liberated themselves from Spanish
Mm.
oppression and built their own, settlements in the Jamaican mountains. And they live there to this day. They're not Jamaicans, they because they made a treaty with the British. to have their own society. And anyway, he was talking about what they were doing, in these societies, and they were just living. You know what I mean? Like they set up their own government, and their own customs and all that kind of stuff. And what he said was, sorry, oh my God, I've misgendered them twice. Because their gender is marriage. They were saying, these people, they died for what they were living for. They died because the colonizers eventually came and broke up that one palenque and killed a bunch of people. And we got to fight the power. We got to organize to fight the power. I'm all about that. But I also would love to see more of us just focusing on our own wholeness, right? As people and as communities, right? And if people want to call that radical, revolutionary, whatever, fine, but what we're doing, right, is just really laying hold of our birthright, which is to live with dignity and joy, right? And pleasure. Yeah, and so I kind of hope, what I imagine, with the music is, I haven't done a show in a while, not since the pandemic, but I hope that, I hope to see like crowds of people and we're all together and we're singing these songs. We're singing these like affirmations over ourselves, really, and seeing people experience healing in real time and connect with each other and all that kind of stuff, And to your point, that is something that Dr. Bernice King told me. She said, this is the kind of activism that we need, not the only type, again, we're an ecosystem. If you're a giraffe, be a giraffe. If you're a flamingo, be a flamingo. If you're a hippopotamus, be a hippopotamus, but when she said that, that was just so affirming to me, because there's still a part of me that's like, if you're not shutting stuff down on the street, then who's going to do it? Well, there are plenty of people who are going to do that.
Right.
So we also need these songs.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I self-identify as like an educational activist. So my activism is in like the classroom, or if I'm speaking somewhere, even like podcasting or on social media.
Yeah, of
like
course.
I don't. So I've been on the front line before, but I know, because of the things that I have going on, it's not feasible for me all the time to be able to do things like that. So activism in multiple domains is a flex.
Right. And I see that, I see the content that you're making and all of that. And I really appreciate that. And we need it, right? And
For
again,
sure.
if everybody's doing the same thing, then everything's not getting done. that's for sure.
Hello. Thank you so much, Andre, for coming through. That was definitely a pleasure getting to know you and the work that you're doing.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And so for the listeners, again, we have a special treat for you. You're going to be able to hear one of Andre's songs, and you'll also be able to click on some of his links in the show notes. So make sure you guys are checking that out. Don't forget, next Wednesday, we have another episode of the Paging Dr. Chanda podcast. And on Thursdays, every Thursday, we have the video version of the podcast that goes live on YouTube and everywhere else you can watch the video podcast. All right, y'all. Have a great night.